The idea of this ministry is to serve God and to bring as many people as possible to Jesus. Second, Titus 13, we look forward to our blessed hope, and we look forward to being raptured. What I call the Gad factor, some people call it the Gad theory. When God first created the heavens in Genesis, go back to the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1. And if you look at verse 1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And then if you read the next verse, and the earth was without form and void, shows a destruction, not a creation. So there certainly is a lot of information missing between verses 1 and 2. And so let's take a look at that today to see if we can figure some of this out and see what looked to be a perfect world that earth created is now without form, simply has its nothingness. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. Deep what? The deep waters. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And then in verse 3, you start to get into where God created the earth as we know it today. So in the beginning, it appears that it was not created for man. So we're going to go over to Job chapter 38 and start at verse 4. And this is God talking to Job, asking him, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare it, if you have understanding, if you know. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if you know?" So if Job knows, tell me how I stretched it out, how I measured it. And then at verse 6, whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? So who laid the cornerstone thereof? So he's asking Job these questions. Were you there? Did you see it? Who are you? You're just man. Showing, obviously he is God. And in verse 7, when the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted for joy. So when all these things happened, the earth being created, somebody was there, and they're called the sons of God. So those would be the angels, the cherubim, and heavenly creatures were there when the earth was created. So that simply lets you realize that the earth wasn't created originally for man, that it was created to be ruled over by Satan, Lucifer, who was at the top of that. So we'll go over to sort of prove that the earth wasn't created just for being void. The earth wasn't created simply out of hey, just God wanted to create something, let it sit there. No, it's quite the scriptures tell us quite the opposite story. So in Isaiah chapter 45, go down to verse 18. For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. So that proves God made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. So he didn't create it. Here, on verse 18, he did not create the earth for just no reason at all. He formed it to be what? Inhabitable. Inhabited means to always have something living on it. So that goes to show that when he first created the earth in Genesis 1:1, he didn't do it just to look upon it. He actually did it to have it to be inhabited. Go to Ezekiel chapter 28 next. I think we'll start at 11. So the word of the Lord came unto Ezekiel. Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus. So who's the king of Tyrus? And saying unto him, thus saith the Lord God, thou sealest up the sum, full wisdom, and perfect beauty. So Titus, the king of Titus, he was in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was Titus's covering. The sardis, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, and the gold, and the workmen of thy tabrets and of thy pipes were prepared unto thee the day that the king of Titus was created. Thou art an anointed cherub. So the king of Titus is a cherub, and he was anointed. that was covered. What was he covered with? He covered God up in the third heaven. So if you know anything about the universe, there's a first heaven where we live on earth, and the air above it, and then there is a second heaven above that where the moon, stars, sun all reside, and then God resides in third heaven, which is above that. This anointed cherub, was a covering for God, and God put him there. And I have set thee so. Thou was upon the holy mountain of God, which is Mount Zion in heaven. And this king of Titus walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wert perfect in all the ways from the day that thou was created until iniquity, which was sin, was found in thee. So we all know this story. Essentially, this was Satan. And Satan was down on earth and was ruler of earth until he fell from his earthly state. And so we'll go to 2 Peter. We'll go chapter 3, verse 5, 6. So jumping over here. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God, that heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflown with water, perished. So this shows that, yes, indeed, the earth perished, that it was overflowed with water. So in that Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 1:2, it showed the earth being created, and then it showed it being void, and the Spirit of God went over the deep what? The deep waters. God flooded the earth in a universal flood, not Noah's flood, a universal flood, which would have destroyed the earth and all the creations that the fallen angels had set up. That's why I think you see pyramids under the sea. It looks like cities and towns that once were. So again, this is not Noah's flood. It was the universal flood. And so then when you go back to Genesis, we'll go back to Genesis. And now this sort of makes more sense. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then all that stuff happened where the king of Titus, Satan, fell from his estate with iniquity, and God had to do something about it. So God created the earth to be inhabited. It was. And then he took it away from them, and that's when man came. That's when Adam came to be. So once God destroyed the previous place where the sons of God inhabited, he had to recreate it. So he didn't create it for the first time. He had to go ahead and to sort of reinvent what was sort of already created to build upon it. So at verse 3, God said, let there be light. There was light. God saw the light that it was good. So light's good. It's opposite of darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And that was the end of the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let that divide the waters from the waters. So there's waters above and below. The waters below is the ocean or the sea that we know of here on earth, and the waters above. If you go above outer space, there's a lattice work. And scientists have even seen this that looks like lattice lines. And beyond that, there's water. And scientists are starting to pick that up. But that is there's water, and then above that is the floor of heaven that's burning fire that Satan can't get through, would like to, but can't. And so that's sort of the way the universe looks. And so the firmament sort of divides those waters. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the second day. And then he created dry land, and so on and on. And so if you sort of look, I'll show you a couple of different verses here. Genesis 1:28. Let's go there. And God blessed them, and God said to them. So God created man in his own image, verse 27. So then he said, hey, we bless you. God blesses you. 3 in 1. Godhead blesses you. Go out, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth. So to me, that's key, replenish. So if you look up the word, replenish, right? If you look up the word replenish, just look it up. So replenish is a verb. It says to fill something up again. So the humans were told by God and were blessed by God to go ahead and replenish the earth, subdue it, to have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. So man is in control of the earth. So we are to be stewards of the earth, hopefully good stewards, but all the creatures, all the animals, people say protecting animals, don't hurt them. No, we are supposed to have dominion and subdue them. Yeah, should we go around just shooting things to shoot things and to waste things to waste things? No, certainly not. But we are in control of the earth. We are at the high and pecking order, deemed by God to be so, as you can see here. Genesis chapter 9, and we'll go verse 1. So this is Noah. So again, to show the same sort of language. So after the universal flood, man was told, Adam was told to replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion of it. So just like God told Adam to do that, he told Noah to do that. When he also had not a universal flood, which flooded the whole universe, but an earthly flood, Noah's flood. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. There's replenish the earth again. It was once full with corrupted men. When the fallen angels came down, polluted the blood of men. Therefore, God had to get rid of that blood, reset man with the perfect family that was purified and had no sons of God, no angel blood within them. So essentially, they went out and conquered the earth and filled it up again, and it was replenished. Same wording. So again, fill up the earth. And so I'm sort of going to stop there. But a lot of people have always wondered about that gap. And it goes to show you the battle between good and evil. Satan, when he fell from that estate, I mean, he wanted to be above God, and he wanted to rise above the sides of Mount Zion. So to go from that to being knocked into hell, to being basically knocked out of your King of Titus position, and an anointed cherub to become something that is despised by God and lower than man, and as man took over dominion of the earth, no wonder Satan hates man. No wonder he wants to destroy us all. And that's that battle versus good versus evil that we're in today. So I thought this might be a blessing to you. I pray it was.